to share something with the Gates Foundation, who also thinks I'm a pain in the ass.
Oh, that's our girl.
I got involved in doing work around the public policy issues dealing with genetic engineering in the 1980s. Was involved in the formation of the first NGO in the world to deal with these issues, the Council for Responsible Genetics. We created here in Seattle a local organization called the Washington Biotechnology Action Council to deal with these issues. All of this is before the 1999 WTO meeting. I was an accredited delegate to the WTO ministerial here in Seattle.
Whoa.
Yes, there aren't many of us here at this lunch, at this dinner. I've actually been accredited to 4 of the ministerials. And after the events here in Seattle, I was approached by Jeremy Simmer, who was probably the lead person trying to organize what became CAGJ. And since I had done a lot of international work, and you may recall that one of the major issues here in Seattle at the WTO ministerial had to do with intellectual property protection for genetically engineered products, foods, and crops.
I remember that.
And we organized a full-day symposium on this down at the Congregational Church on 6th Avenue. 400 people fought their way through the police lines to get to that event. So when Jeremy approached me, I was very interested in the expansion of the issue areas into the ones that he was talking about. As you, many of you know, after the first few years, CAGJ decided to focus specifically on food issues. So the area in which I had been continuing to work, including participating in the negotiation of 2 United Nations treaties dealing with genetically modified organisms, played a very interesting role in the development of CAGJ.
Oh, yeah.
I had many contacts with colleagues in Africa, as do people like Heather. And of course, that's where the Gates Foundation decided to target its GMO activities. So I got involved in what eventually became the AgriWatch Project. We started out with a summit here in Seattle of leading farm groups, activists here in the US, and about, I guess, 8 people from Africa who were involved in many of these issues. 2 of them I had worked with extensively, one of whom is my dear friend Mariam Mayet, who is a major environmental lawyer on the continent. We had to take advantage of our location being here in Seattle because of this is where the Gates Foundation is. And the African colleagues looked to us as if we were all powerful because we happened to be in the same damn city. Our connections with Africa over the years and with African colleagues have been pretty amazing, both as the experience of the organization and certainly personally. I'll speak for myself. It has been going to South Africa to several meetings, to Ghana, etc. Really an amazing experience. The international negotiation through the UN that I was most involved with involved in the creation of a treaty called the Cartagena Biosafety Protocol. One of the things I did with CAGJ was to bring a number of people from the organization to raise funds to a meeting of the protocol so that folks could become better acquainted with other activists from Europe and Asia, etc. Heather talked a lot about what CAGJ has done through the AgriWatch project. Let me just mention one other thing. At one of the meetings for the protocol with all the governments, this was in Nagoya in Japan, several of us put on what's called a side event at lunchtime, a symposium or a conference. And we were going to talk about genetically engineered crops, particularly one having to do with wheat. And the audience was comprised mainly of folks from the US Ag Department, the Gates Foundation, and the South African government.
Oh, dear.
It was quite an amazing experience for our little organization to be in front of those sorts of people. In sum, I would say that despite the limitations of size and money, we have punched far above our weight. Thank you.
Probably not. This is so good. I don't know.
All right, can I do this without the mic, or you want the mic back?
Mic back there? Mic back. Mic check. One rally.
They said no, my
Okay.
No mic. Okay. I don't know if we can resolve this. Okay, I'll try to project. How about that? Good? Better. Okay. Thanks, Heather. Thanks for the intro. My name's Chris. I'm going to time myself now. Okay. Using the organizing skills I learned at CAGJ. So quick origin story, how I got involved. We'll talk about Jeremy Simmer again, but I was a high school radical. I wrote papers on the Zapatistas, EZLN. Yeah. Can't hear me. Okay. Okay.
We'll go back to this. Okay. Freshman at Seattle University, I went to a talk about the Zapatistas following up on being a high school radical and writing papers on the EZLN. Walked up to Carlos Fuentes from El Comité Pro Amnistia and Justicia, and he said, "Hey, if you want to get involved, you should look up CAGJ." And I did, and the rest is history. But I'll go through some of that now. I became an intern working on the FTAA, CAFTA, organizing. I remember campaigns to get on ferries with captive audiences to encourage their representatives to oppose free trade agreements. Studied abroad, came back. Jeremy, founder at the time, and Heather said, "Hey, we're starting to focus on food systems, agriculture, and globalization." I said, "That's what I'm interested in." Excited that our art, the great fit of just being a part of CAGJ, continued.
Thank you.
Formative experience for sure, being a part of the Food Justice Project, especially helping to develop the solidarity campaigns. Heather talked a lot about the different campaigns that are continuing on today. And through that, just got exposure to so many critiques, perspectives, critical issues around food systems, from the impacts of global food trade to small-scale farmers, native and tribal fishers, and food sovereignty, to grocery and farm worker rights, to Black-led urban farms and food justice organizing locally in Seattle and beyond. Honored to be a part of the organizing with CAGJ to educate about food justice issues, especially locally here in Seattle. And learned so much through that, working to mobilize people to action and how different diverse food systems are linked through extractive corporate food systems and capitalism, racism, sexism, and really how food systems is multiple systems linked together. There's no shortage of threads to pull and see how things are connected, how things unravel, or get reinforced. And I feel like it's just introduced to intersectionality, through practice. Being involved with CAGJ has had a big impact on my life. Food systems jobs, various day jobs, as I've called them. So helping me to understand accurately the problems and hopefully work towards solutions that communities most affected by food and economic justice and global capitalism are prioritizing and trying to advance, but also how to do the work. Organizing through movement and community power, solidarity, allyship, to help with respect and humility. And so this has led me to just dive deeper into the opportunities and limits of public policy programs that align with the food sovereignty vision, from working on bettering school lunch programs with their roots in the Black Panther free breakfast program, to just being so inspired by the policy victories of the farm worker movement in Washington to pass strengthened labor laws, and just thinking about public policy as one tool to fight against corporate pull of the food system. And maybe most of all, learned about being in it for the long haul. And I think that's why a lot of us are here. The work doesn't happen overnight. Learn to stay in it, try to stay in it for the marathon and not the sprint over time. And I think that speaks to the staying power of CAGJ. It's a small grassroots anti-capitalist org that's survived and thrived for this long. And I, like probably many of us, came for the politics, the movement for economic justice and food sovereignty, stayed for the people. So I met countless people that have had an impact on my life, whether it's the issues and working together on various campaigns. And so just want to thank everyone for being a part of it.
Can't hear you.
Hi everyone. I never do public speaking, so this is a first for both.
With the mic close to your mouth.
Hi, is that better? It's really bizarre to speak into a mic, especially with reverb. Okay. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm honored that Heather asked me to talk a bit about CAGJ tonight, and when my plans changed for this weekend last minute, of course I said yes. So I'm honored, which is different from prepared because I wrote this speech this morning. So brace yourselves for a heartfelt but certainly disorganized chat. In the fall of 2019, I moved back to Seattle after graduating college and pretty immediately got involved with CAGJ. I had learned about food sovereignty that previous spring semester and felt compelled by it in a way I didn't by other environmental movement terms. Food sovereignty calls for a full transformation, an overhaul, a promise of a way out of the neoliberal food system entirely. Food sovereignty rejects assimilation into capitalism. Instead, it beckons a new world. Energized by this vision, I decided to volunteer a few times with CAGJ. I felt grounded by the community amidst the wild techification. Google says that's not a word, but I'm making it a word tonight, of my hometown. Soon after I joined CAGJ, the pandemic slammed down upon us, but organizers did what we do best, which is activate in the face of fear. So many projects sprang forth from the nest of CAGJ during that time. Rise Up Pandemic Summer School and the emergence of the Organizing Collective, the third version of Our Food, Our Right, Solidarity Fundraising for Familias Unidas por la Justicia, and even a CAGJ offshoot of Prison and Police Abolition Reading Group. Lockdown CAGJ was a space for a lot of us young organizers to dive into shifting systems of power as best as we could. And though many of the organizing collective have moved into other projects, as I have, it is one of my coolest friend groups. Everyone is still organizing, and there's something to say for that. I'd been volunteering with CAGJ for about a year before I was accepted into the fold as an intern liaison for Block Corporate Salmon, one of CAGJ's steadfast coalition partners, and who is here tonight holding down the struggle to stop aqua bounty from threatening salmon species extinction, ecosystem imbalance, and indigenous sovereignty by growing genetically modified salmon. For a few months, we were on the verge of convincing one of the big three U.S. food producers to commit to not sourcing or selling aqua bounty salmon, and we won. It was my first campaign win, and that win transformed me from someone who believed in grassroots organizing to someone who knows it works. Working on that campaign showed me that behind the outward wins is months, even years of relationship building, fundraising, learning Canva, researching, and what is behind the wins is the process of justice. Through the people, coalitions, and movement space of CAGJ, I learned to believe in the process of justice.
Because I'm not eating.
So I'll leave you with a quote, which is more of an incantation, which came to me from Heather's email signature every time I opened up my inbox. So thank you for all of your emails, Heather. I'll get to the quote in a minute, but every time I read it, it reminds me why we are doing what we are doing. It splits open my computer screen with a spell, promises that transformation is incremental, it is sometimes bursting, but most times subtle. And importantly, that although the future we are creating can't always be seen from here, it is being created. It's a process of justice. A grouping of tree saplings looks nothing like the old growth forest it is bound to become, but each time you decide to show up to that rally, or to dig up your lawn and plant native prairie, or to donate a little bit to CAGJ, or to sit with your grief and cry, or to call your senators and tell them to free Palestine. It was enough that one dead child, but now 17,000. You don't see the world you're creating when you're deep in the systems of oppression that have tried to convince us that that's all there is, but that's not all there is. You are shifting the soil, you are planting the sapling. And so this is the quote by Arundhati Roy. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Thank you.
Cheers for the chef.
I actually did not cook most of the food. That was Marja's kitchen. So give it up for Marja's. My name is Emily, and I'm here because I can't say no to Heather. And she ropes me into all the great things that she's been doing ever since I am no longer a board member of CAGJ. I was recruited as the token student organizer at the first board meeting after I helped organize students at Seattle Central and high schools to do a walkout around the WTO, and then we continued. Thank you. And then we continued to work on policy work around the privatization of education and our local state tuition increases and the process of what was happening as students in our schools being connected to trade policy. So that's how I came to CAGJ, and Heather asked me to talk about some of my favorite memories, and I was at the first meeting where we were talking about a name, and we went through so many meetings trying to find a name with a good acronym, which never happened, and really trying to figure out how to have a good name for something as complex as what we were doing. And in reflecting on that, I've really been thinking about how audacious the goal that Jeremy and Heather had was to have a completely community-funded organization talking about global trade policy. And so that is my lasting appreciation of not only the work they did as founders, but how the work that all of you have done to carry this work as it's evolved is so inspiring and so audacious in the most beautiful way. And I have not worked in social justice for many years. And every time I come back into these spaces, which is not as often as it should be, I am just really overcome with the generosity of spirit that we all in this room, you all in this room, come to this work, and the love and the limitless work and dedication it takes emotionally, financially, all of the things to show up to try to make things better. So I love you. I'm so proud of you for all of your work and taking the next step. And my favorite CAGJ story besides the name Soup was I lived at a anarchist house with Webster Walker and about 25 other scruffy students. And after we came up with the name CAGJ, they thought that was the funniest name ever. So it became like a punchline. It was like, oh, are you going to CAGJ again? So it became like the hey, what's going on in the CAGJ? Yeah, and all of the memories I was thinking of, lots of weird ones, a lot of which I cannot tell. You're welcome. But my favorite one being when we first started out, we had no money. Like, we were squatting at 606 Maynard, and Sispus was letting us kind of use our office, and Wabi Fasa was also letting us use our office. And I worked for a catering company, and I was like, well, I could cook a dinner, and we could have dinner. And so at the time, my dad lived across the street from a park, and I recruited some of my friends in the trades to build a movie screen out of sheetrock, and we hosted a viewing of The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, which was for those who have not seen it, it was a documentary about Hugo Chavez and the revolution in Venezuela and the international press blackout around that uprising. So it was really exciting because no one had seen it, and somehow we got a copy. And this is so weird. And I cooked this huge meal, and so many people in this room were at that dinner. I'm now seeing Bob and Sue and Webb and Bobby and Michael and so many people. And anyways, after that, people started trying to hire me as a caterer, and I started saying yes. And I was able to put myself through graduate school based upon that job for CAGJ. So, which was also not the first job because Mike Graham Square hired me first, but it was a better story. Thank you very much. I love you. Thank you all for doing the work you do. And Let's see. Yeah, this was a particularly hard ask because she was responsible for feeding you all at the same moment that I wanted her to tell a story. But she's got it all organized. Thank you so much to each one of you. It was really wonderful to hear your stories. Trying not to fall over there. So I just want to remind you while you're enjoying your dinner to check out the silent auction again. It'll close at 8 p.m. We'll announce when you have like 10 minutes left. And hopefully we'll get the desserts out so you can start choosing your dessert. All right. Bon appetit.